Your reality is running on code, and you have never once seen the code. You have only ever seen the graphics. The bank account, the bills, the job, the apartment, the look on people's faces, the number that makes your stomach drop. All of it is the rendered image, the picture on the screen, the output. And like every player who has ever lived inside a game, you have spent your entire life desperately trying to change the graphics by grabbing at the graphics, reaching into the screen, fighting the pixels, when the pixels are not where anything is decided. The pixels are the last step. They are the display. Behind them, underneath them, generating every frame, is the code. And Neville Goddard found the cheat. He found the place where the code is written, and he found out there is a cheat code hidden in your own mind, that you have had access to the developer console the entire time, and no one ever told you it was there. Let me make this completely clear, because once you see reality this way, you cannot unsee it, and it changes how you approach every single thing. Think about how a video game actually works. What you see on the screen, the world, the character, the money counter, the enemies, none of it is real in the way it appears. It is being generated frame by frame from code running underneath. The screen is just the render of the code. If you wanted to change something in that world, only a fool would walk up to the television and start clawing at the screen trying to physically move a pixel. The pixel is an effect. The code is the cause. To change what renders on the screen, you change the code, and the screen updates automatically, instantly, with no struggle, because the screen was never anything but an obedient display of whatever the code says. Now here is the part that should rearrange something in your skull. Your life works exactly the same way. The physical world you see around you is the render. Your circumstances are the graphics. And the code, the thing generating every frame of your experience, is your assumptions, your dominant inner states, the beliefs you hold so deep you do not even experience them as beliefs. You experience them as just reality. That is the code. That is what is running underneath, generating the bank account, the opportunities you notice and the ones you are blind to, the way people respond to you, the whole rendered world. And what does almost every human being do? Their entire life. They claw at the screen. They try to change the rendered circumstances by force, by hustle, by manipulating the pixels directly, while never once touching the code that is generating those pixels in the first place. They are fighting the display and calling it effort. This is why people work themselves into the ground and stay exactly where they are. They are running the same code and expecting different graphics. You can hustle 16 hours a day, but if the code underneath says, "I am someone who struggles, I am someone money runs from, I am behind," the render will faithfully keep producing a struggling behind broke life, because the screen can only ever display what the code says. You changed your behavior. You never changed the source. And the game does what every game does. It renders the code, not your wishes, not your hard work. The code. The assumption running underneath, persistent, unquestioned, generating frame after frame after frame of the same life, while you exhaust yourself attacking the screen. Neville said it in language that sounds spiritual but is really almost technical. He said that the world is imaginal, that the outer reality is a projection, a shadow cast by the inner state. Change the inner state, he said, and the outer must change because the outer is nothing but the inner pushed out, displayed, rendered. He said assumptions harden into fact. In the language of the game, your assumption is the line of code, and when you hold it long enough with enough conviction, it compiles, it runs, and the world renders it as your circumstances. He was describing the developer console a century before anyone had the metaphor to make it land. He found the cheat. The cheat is that you stop playing the game on the surface, fighting the rendered world, and you drop down into the code and rewrite the line that is generating everything you do not want. So what is the cheat code exactly? It is the deliberate assumption of the end state, held until it compiles. It is choosing on purpose the line of code you want running, and installing it underneath in the place where reality is actually generated, instead of accepting the default code you were handed by your upbringing and your circumstances, and the 1,000 voices that programmed you before you could choose. Most people are running code they never wrote. They inherited it, the poverty assumption from their parents. The "I am not the kind of person who gets rich" line installed by a childhood of lack. The money is hard, money is scarce, money is dangerous subroutines absorbed from a frightened family, running silently underneath their whole adult life, rendering a world that matches while they blame the world. The cheat is realizing you can overwrite all of it. You can open the console and type a new line, and if you hold it, the render updates. Let me show you how completely backwards you have been taught to operate, because this is the core glitch in human behavior that keeps almost everyone trapped. You have been taught that seeing is believing, that you will believe you are wealthy when you see the wealth on the screen. That belief is the result, the reward, the thing you are allowed to have once the graphics finally change. But in a game, the screen never changes first. The screen cannot change first. The code changes and then the screen renders the change. So waiting to believe until you see it is like waiting for the screen to update before you touch the code. It will never happen. You have the entire sequence inverted. Belief is not the response to changed graphics. Belief, the assumed state held as real, is the code change that causes the graphics to update. Believing is the input. Seeing is the output. And you have been sitting there demanding the output before you will supply the input, then concluding the game is broken. This is the cheat the people who seem impossibly lucky are running, whether they know it or not. You have met them or watched them, the people for whom things just seem to work out, who walk into opportunities, who carry an unbothered certainty that they will be fine, and then, annoyingly, are always fine. You assume they have some advantage you lack. Often they do not. What they have is different code. Somewhere, usually in childhood, the line got installed that says, "I am someone things work out for. I am someone who has enough. I belong among people who do well." And they have been rendering that code their whole lives, noticing the opportunities a person in that state notices, taking the risks a person in that state takes, recovering from setbacks the way a person in that state recovers, and the game has faithfully rendered them a charmed life, not because the universe likes them better, because their code was different, and the screen always renders the code. Now let me deal with the resistance that just fired in you, because the logical mind hates this metaphor at first. A voice is saying, "My life is not a game, my bills are real, my hunger is real, my fear is real, this is not pixels on a screen." And the voice is right that the render is real to you the same way the graphics in a game are completely real to the character living inside them. The character cannot tell it is rendered. To the character, the wall is solid, the danger is genuine, the money counter is the difference between surviving and not. The render being convincing does not mean it is the cause. It means it is a good render. Your bills are real the way a wall in the game is real, as a faithful display of the code currently running. That does not make them the source. It makes them the output you have been trying to fight at the wrong layer. The realness of the screen was never evidence that the screen is where the power is. It is evidence of how completely the render absorbs everyone who forgets there is code underneath. And here is why the code keeps running, even when you consciously want something else. Because this is the trap that makes people give up. You can sit and want wealth all day long on the surface. You can say you want it, plan for it, work for it. But wanting runs on the surface layer, the conscious layer, and the render is not generated from the surface layer. It is generated from the deep code, the assumptions running underneath, the ones you do not experience as choices. And here is the cruelty of it. When you want money intensely, the wanting itself is a line of code, and the line it writes is, "I do not have this." Desire, felt as lack, compiles into the assumption of absence, and the screen dutifully renders absence. This is why the people who want it most, who chase hardest, who need it most desperately, so often stay the most stuck. Their wanting is broadcasting a continuous line of code that says it is not here, and the game renders exactly that, with perfect, indifferent obedience. They are cheating against themselves, running a script of lack at full volume while begging the screen for abundance. So the first move, before you can install anything new, is to find out what code is actually running right now, because most of it is invisible to you. You do not see your assumptions, you see the world they render and you call it reality. So you have to read the code backwards from the output. Look at your rendered life, honestly. The recurring patterns, the things that keep happening, the ceiling you keep hitting, the way money seems to behave around you. That render is a printout of your code. If money consistently comes and then vanishes, there is a line running that says, "I am not someone who keeps money." If opportunities consistently appear and you consistently find a reason they will not work, there is a line running that says, "Good things are not really for me." The pattern is the tell. You read the persistent pattern in the graphics and you trace it back to the assumption generating it. And now for the first time you can see the actual line of code, instead of just suffering its output. You cannot overwrite a line you cannot see. And understand what kind of layer you are dealing with, because it tells you why willpower fails and what actually works. The code does not live in the part of you that reasons and decides. It lives deeper, in the part that runs automatically, the part that was written before you had words, by repetition and emotion and the environment you grew up in. That deep layer does not respond to argument. You cannot debate it into changing. You can know with total logical certainty that money is just a tool and there is plenty of it, and still render a broke life because the knowing is on the surface layer and the code is in the basement, and the basement does not read the surface. The basement is reached only through specific states, the states where the surface layer goes quiet and the deep layer becomes writable. Strong emotion is one. The edge of sleep is the most reliable. That drowsy threshold right before you go under is when the console opens, when the guard that rejects new code finally logs off, and whatever you feel as real in that window gets written straight into the source. This is the whole reason affirmations mostly fail, and why people conclude the cheat does not work when they were never actually in the console. They stand in front of a mirror in full waking consciousness, the surface layer wide awake and skeptical, and they type, "I am wealthy," at a system that is not in write mode. The guard is on duty. It reads the new line, compares it against the render on the screen, sees the empty account and rejects the input as false. Nothing gets written. They do this for months, see no change in the graphics and quit, never realizing they were trying to edit the code while the system was locked. The cheat only works when you reach the layer where code is actually written in the receptive state, where the new line is accepted without the guard rejecting it for failing to match the current screen. Method matters as much as message. The right line typed at the wrong layer does nothing. There is one more thing about this game you have to accept, and it is the hardest part for the ego, because it removes your favorite explanations. If your reality is the render of your code, then the circumstances you have been blaming, the economy, the people who wronged you, the bad luck, the timing, are not the cause. They are part of the render. They are graphics. And as long as you locate the cause out there in the screen, in the circumstances, you will keep clawing at the screen and the code will keep running untouched. The moment you accept that the cause is the code and the code is yours, something uncomfortable and then enormously freeing happens. Uncomfortable because you can no longer blame the screen. Freeing because the screen was never something you could control anyway, and the code is the one thing you have always had full access to, if only you had known the console was there. You trade the comfort of blame for the power of authorship. That is the trade Neville was offering, and almost no one takes it because blame is warm and authorship is heavy. But authorship is the only thing that has ever changed a single frame. If this is cracking something open in your head, do one thing before we go deeper into exactly how to rewrite your code. In the comments, type cheat code, just those two words, because what comes next is the actual console, the precise method for overwriting the assumption that has been rendering your broke reality on a loop. The pinned comment has the full step-by-step of how to install a new line of code and make it stick through the moments the old code tries to reassert itself. Type cheat code. So I know you are ready to stop clawing at the screen, and let me show you where the developer console actually is and how to open it tonight. So here is the console, the exact method for opening it and writing a new line, and I want you to follow this precisely, because the precision is the difference between editing the code and just thinking about editing the code. The console opens at the edge of sleep. Every night without fail, you pass through a drowsy in-between state on your way down into sleep, that hazy threshold where your thoughts start to drift and images float up on their own, and the sharp, skeptical surface mind begins to dissolve. That state is write mode. That is when the guard logs off and the deep layer becomes editable. Most people pass through that window every single night and use it to render their fears, replaying the day, rehearsing the bills, feeling the lack, and they unknowingly rewrite the same broke code one more time, reinforcing it, recompiling the exact life they are trying to escape. You are going to use that window on purpose to write a different line. Here is how you write it. You do not type words. The deep layer does not read words, it reads states, felt experience, sensory scenes treated as real. So you build one short scene that could only be true if the new code were already running. if the money were already yours. Not a movie of how it happens. One small moment that implies it is done. The feeling of checking the account and feeling nothing but calm because the number is simply normal. The handshake and the words "you did it." The quiet of a paid-off home. The specific silence of a place no one can take from you. You pick one, and as you lie there drifting towards sleep, you enter it from the inside, first person, and you feel it as real, as already the case, until you fall asleep inside it. That is the new line typed into the console in the only language the deep layer accepts. You are not asking for the code to change. You are writing the changed code as an accomplished fact and falling asleep while it compiles. And then comes the part that separates the people whose lives change from the people who try it twice and quit. Persistence. Because code does not compile from a single entry when there is decades of old code running against it. The old line, the broke assumption, has been running and reinforcing for 30, 40, 50 years. One night of new code does not overwrite that, but every night you return to the console and write the new line again, you weaken the old and strengthen the new, and there is a tipping point, a moment where the new code finally becomes dominant and begins to render. You cannot see how close you are to that tipping point from inside the process, which is exactly why most people quit right before it, deciding it does not work on night 9 when the patch would have gone live on night 14. You commit to writing the new line every night, not as an experiment you are auditing for fast results, but as the new permanent way you fall asleep, and you let the compile finish on its own schedule. Now the daytime, because the console at night is only half of it, and people sabotage the night work all day without realizing. During your waking hours, you are still running code. Every reaction, every felt state is an entry. So when the rendered world shows you evidence of the old code, a bill, a setback, a number that disappoints, your reaction is a line being written. React the old way, with the stomach drop, the "here we go again," the "I never get ahead," and you have just re-entered the old line in broad daylight, overwriting the new code you wrote the night before. So the daytime discipline is this. When the screen shows you lack, you refuse to react from the old code. You handle the practical thing, you pay the bill, but you do not let it set your state. You say internally, that is the old render finishing. That is graphics from code I have already changed, not the truth of what is compiling now. You feel the new self, the one for whom this is a minor, unbothered nothing, and you hold that for a breath. Now both the night and the day are writing the same line, and the compile accelerates instead of fighting itself. Let me warn you about the NPCs because this trips people badly. The people in your rendered world are largely running on your code too, reflecting back the assumptions you hold. When you start running new code, some of the NPCs will glitch, will resist, will tell you that you are being unrealistic, that you have changed, that you should come back down to the old render where they are comfortable. This is not a sign you are doing it wrong. It is a sign the render is updating and the old graphics are fighting the patch. The people around you were calibrated to the old you, the old code, and a system updating its core assumption sends ripples through everything calibrated to the old version. You do not argue with the glitching NPCs. You do not need them to validate the new code. You hold the new line regardless, and the render reorganizes, and either the people around you update to the new version of you, or they fade out of the render, and new characters, calibrated to the new code, appear. The cast of your life is also part of the graphics, and the graphics follow the code. And let me warn you about the rollback attempt, because it always comes, and it ambushes the people who do not expect it. You will write the new code. You will feel it start to take. The render will begin to shift, money will move, something good will happen, and then, out of nowhere, a setback will hit, a big one, and the old code will surge back up with all its original force, the stomach drop, the certainty that nothing really changed, that you are exactly who you always were. This is the system attempting a rollback, the old code making its strongest play to reassert itself, testing whether you will abandon the new line and revert to the old version. It feels like proof that the cheat failed. It is the opposite. It is the old code, dying, throwing its heaviest punch precisely because it is losing. The people who break through are the ones who recognize the rollback for what it is and refuse to revert, who hold the new line through the worst of it, and when the storm passes and they are still running the new code, the old line loses its last leverage because it played its strongest card, and the system did not roll back. Now step all the way back and look at what this actually means about your life. because it goes far past money. If your entire reality is the render of your code, then you have never once been a victim of your circumstances. You have been the author of them, mostly unconsciously, running inherited code you never chose, and watching it render a life you did not understand you were writing. That is brutal to absorb, and then it becomes the most powerful thing you will ever understand, because it means there is no situation that is fixed, no ceiling that is permanent, no render that cannot be changed at the source. Everything you see is editable, because everything you see is downstream of code, and the code is yours, and the console has been inside you your entire life. You were born with developer access, and you spent decades as a player clawing at the screen because no one ever told you the console existed. Tonight, you know it exists, and you know where it is, and you know how to open it. So let me assemble the whole cheat, simply, the way you will run it. You read your current code by looking honestly at the recurring patterns in your rendered life, and you identify the old line that has been generating your money reality. You decide on the new line, the end state, the assumption you want running instead. You open the console every night at the edge of sleep, and you write the new line by entering a small scene that could only be true if it were already done, feeling it as real until you fall asleep inside it. You guard the new code through the day by refusing to react from the old line when the screen shows you lack, holding the state of the new self instead. You ignore the glitching NPCs, and you hold through the rollback attempt, recognizing both as signs the patch is taking, not failing. And you persist every night, past the point where you can see progress, until the new code becomes dominant, and the render finally inevitably updates to match. Because that is the law of this game, the one Neville spent his life trying to hand people, and the one almost everyone died never using. The screen always renders the code, always, it has no choice. It cannot display anything other than what is running underneath. So the only real question of your entire life, the question under every other question, is what code are you running, and are you running it on purpose or by accident? You have been running it by accident, inheriting lines you never wrote, clawing at a screen that was only ever showing you your own source. Tonight you stop clawing. Tonight you open the console. Tonight you write the line you actually want running, and you start the compile that, held long enough, rewrites everything the screen has ever shown you. Let me get ahead of the trap that catches the people who love this metaphor a little too much, because there is a way to misuse it that guarantees failure. Some of you hearing all this will turn it into a frantic, manipulative game. You will treat the console like a slot machine, rushing to it every night, anxiously checking the screen every morning for the render to update, refreshing your circumstances 40 times a day, looking for the patch to go live. And that anxious checking is itself a line of code, and the line it writes is "it has not happened yet," which is the assumption of absence, which renders absence. The checking is the broke man's code. A person who has genuinely written the new line does not stand over the system anxiously waiting for it to compile, the same way you do not stand over a download bar holding your breath. They write the line and they go live their life in the calm certainty that it is done and rendering. That unbothered certainty is not a nice bonus. It is the actual proof that the new code is installed, because doubt checks and conviction rests. And this is the deepest part of the cheat, the part that sounds like a paradox until it clicks. You have to write the new line as already true, not as something you are trying to make true. The moment you are trying, you are confessing it is not yet so, and trying compiles as not yet. The state you are reaching for is not "I am working hard to become wealthy." It is the flat, almost boring certainty of "I am wealthy," the way you hold your own name with no strain, no effort, no reaching, because reaching itself is the tell of lack. When the new scene starts to feel ordinary, unremarkable, already the case, that is when you know the line went in, because the deep layer only accepts as code what you treat as already real. The drama of wanting has to dissolve into the calm of having. That calm is the compiled state. The wanting was just the old code, loud, fighting to stay running. Think about what this does to your relationship with the entire outer world, because it reverses the direction you have lived your whole life. Until now, you have been an effect. The world acted, and you reacted. The screen showed you something, and your state responded to it, which means your code was being written by the render in an endless loop where the graphics generated the code that generated the graphics, locking you in place. The cheat breaks that loop. You become the cause. You decide the state first, you write the code first, regardless of what the screen is currently showing, and you let the render reorganize to match. You stop letting the graphics dictate your code, and you start letting your code dictate the graphics, which is the natural order that was inverted in you by a lifetime of being taught to react to circumstances instead of authoring them. That single reversal from effect to cause, from reacting to authoring, is the whole of what Neville was trying to give people, dressed in the language of his century instead of ours. And once you have lived this for a while, money stops being the point, which is the strange thing nobody warns you about. Money was only ever one variable in the render, one number on the screen, and once you understand that the screen renders the code, you realize you hold the console for every variable, not just the financial one. The same cheat that rewrites the money line rewrites the line about what kind of person you are, what you are capable of, what your relationships look like, how you carry yourself through a room. Money is just the variable most people come to the console desperate to change first because lack of it screams the loudest. But the skill you are building, the ability to write code at the source instead of clawing at the screen, is the master skill under every other thing you will ever want to change. You came for the money. You will stay because you finally found the console, and the console runs everything. This is why the people who truly get this become almost unrecognizable over a few years, and everyone around them reaches for explanations about luck and timing and connections. They are not luckier. They stopped being players and became developers. They stopped accepting the render as fixed reality and started treating it as editable output. They write their lines deliberately, hold them through the rollbacks, ignore the glitching NPCs, and let the screen do what the screen has always done: render the code, faithfully, indifferently, completely. They are not fighting reality anymore. They are authoring it from the only place it was ever authored: the source, the console, the inner state, the place the verse and the lore and the cheat all point to, the place that has been inside you, accessible, your entire life, waiting for you to stop clawing at the screen long enough to notice the developer access you were born with. So here is what I want you to do, and it matters more than a like or a share. In the comments, write 2 lines. First, the old code you have finally spotted, the recurring pattern in your rendered life that reveals the assumption that has been running you. And second, the new line you are going to write tonight, the end state you are going to fall asleep inside, the small scene that could only be true if the new code were already live. Putting it in words pulls it out of the fog and makes it real, and reading what others write will show you lines of code you never thought to try. I read these, and I answer the people who clearly understand the difference between the screen and the source. Then come back and tell me what in your render started to glitch and shift, because the people who report back are the people the patch goes live for, every single time. You have been a player your whole life. Tonight you become the developer. Open the console, write the line, and let the screen do the only thing it has ever known how to do, which is render, faithfully, whatever you are finally brave enough to write.